The Crimson Gear. The city of Ironspire was a labyrinth of steel and steam, a sprawling metropolis where towering spires clawed at the sky, and the streets below were choked with the ceaseless grind of industry. Smoke billowed from countless factories, casting a perpetual haze over the city that turned the setting sun into a fiery red disk. Airships drifted lazily overhead, their engines humming with a low, steady drone, while the rhythmic clang of machinery reverberated through the narrow alleyways and crowded squares. This was a city where innovation and greed walked hand in hand, where the powerful thrived in opulent towers, and the destitute were crushed beneath the wheels of progress. In the heart of Ironspire, where the shadows were deepest and the smog thickest, a lone figure made her way through the bustling streets. She was tall and striking, her presence commanding attention despite the throngs of people. Her hair, a brilliant cascade of red, flowed like molten metal, and her eyes, a vivid green, gleamed with a sharp intelligence that missed nothing. She wore a fitted leather coat, its dark material adorned with brass buckles and rivets, cinched at the waist with a wide belt that held an array of gadgets and tools. Her hands, gloved in supple leather, rested casually on the twin revolvers strapped to her hips, sleek, deadly weapons crafted with precision and care. This was Ember Blackthorn, the infamous gunslinger of Ironspire, known in every corner of the city for her skill, her cunning, and her relentless pursuit of justice. Or vengeance, depending on who you asked. As Ember moved through the streets, she could feel the city's pulse, a chaotic rhythm of gears and pistons, of lives and secrets intertwined. Tonight, that pulse led her to a place she had long avoided, the Rusted Rail, a tavern nestled in the underbelly of the city, where the air was thick with the scent of oil and cheap whiskey, and the patrons were as rough as the cobblestones outside. Ember pushed open the heavy wooden door, and the din of the tavern washed over her raucous laughter, the clink of glasses, and the low hum of conversations too dangerous to be spoken aloud. She stepped inside, her gaze sweeping over the room, taking in the familiar faces of thugs, mercenaries, and smugglers, each one more dangerous than the last. But it wasn't them she was here for. At the far end of the bar, a man sat alone, his back to the wall, a glass of whiskey cradled in one hand. He was a large man, broad-shouldered and rough around the edges, with a face that had seen too many brawls and a pair of eyes that gleamed with the same cunning as Ember's. His name was Jax Shroud Mercer, a name whispered in the darkest alleys and spoken with fear in the highest towers. He was a smuggler, a killer, and the only person in Ironspire who might have the information Ember needed. Ember walked up to the bar, her boots clicking against the metal floor, and took the stool next to Jax. The bartender, a wiry man with a face as weathered as the old steel beams that held up the city, raised an eyebrow at her, but Ember waved him off. She wasn't here for a drink. Jax, Ember said, her voice low but firm. I need information. Jax didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the amber liquid in his glass. Information isn't free, Blackthorn, he replied, his voice a gravelly rumble. Especially not for you. Ember smirked, leaning in slightly. I didn't expect it to be. But I think what I have to offer will be worth your while. Jax finally turned to look at her, his eyes narrowing as he sized her up. And what exactly are you offering? Ember's smirk widened. A chance to take down Victor Locke. The name hung in the air like a spark ready to ignite, and for a moment, the noise of the tavern seemed to fade into the background. Victor Locke was a name that carried weight in Ironspire, a man of immense power and influence, a mastermind who controlled the city's most lucrative industries and darkest secrets. He was untouchable, or so everyone believed. But Ember had made it her life's mission to prove them wrong. Jax's expression didn't change, but Ember could see the flicker of interest in his eyes. Locke's a big fish, he said carefully. What makes you think you can reel him in? I have a lead, Ember replied, her voice steady. A shipment coming into the city tonight, something Locke doesn't want anyone to know about. If we intercept it, we can take away one of his most valuable assets. Jax considered her words, swirling the whiskey in his glass. You've got guts, I'll give you that. But Locke's not the type to go down without a fight. You sure you're ready for this? Ember's gaze hardened. I've been ready for this since the day he killed my father. Jax nodded slowly, setting his glass down on the bar. All right, Blackthorn. You've got my attention. But this better not be a wild goose chase. It won't be, Ember assured him, already standing up. Meet me at the old clock tower in an hour. We'll go over the plan. As Ember turned to leave, Jax called after her, and Blackthorn, don't get yourself killed. Locke's a dangerous man. Ember paused, glancing back at him with a wry smile. So am I. The clock tower was one of the oldest structures in Ironspire, a relic from a time before the city had become a sprawling industrial beast. Its gears and cogs had long since ground to a halt, leaving it as a silent sentinel overlooking the city. It was here, amidst the rusting machinery and crumbling stone, that Ember waited, her breath visible in the cool night air. Jax arrived right on time, a large burlap sack slung over his shoulder. Got the gear, he said, dropping the sack at Ember's feet. And a couple of extra toys, just in case things get messy. Ember knelt down, opening the sack to reveal an assortment of weapons and gadgets, explosives, smoke bombs, and a few devices that even she didn't recognize. She picked up a small, metallic sphere, turning it over in her hands. What's this? An EMP, Jax explained. Should take out any of Locke's tech if things go south. Nice, Ember said, tucking the sphere into her coat. Let's move. The shipment's due to arrive at the South Docks in 30 minutes. The docks were a maze of cranes and shipping containers, bathed in the dim glow of gas lamps and the occasional flicker of electric lights. The air was thick with the smell of salt water and oil, and the sound of waves lapping against the pier mingled with the distant clatter of machinery. Ember and Jax moved silently through the shadows, sticking to the edges of the docks as they made their way toward the designated rendezvous point. They found the shipment exactly where Ember's informant had said it would be, a large, unmarked crate loaded onto a flatbed truck, surrounded by a dozen of Locke's men. The guards were heavily armed, their faces obscured by dark goggles and respirators, and they moved with the precision of trained mercenaries. Ember crouched behind a stack of crates, peering through the scope of her rifle. There it is, she whispered. We need to get closer. Jax nodded, pulling out a pair of goggles and a small grappling hook. I'll take the high ground. You take out the guards. Ember gave him a brief nod, her expression determined. Watch my back. With that, Jax fired the grappling hook, the line snaking up to the top of a nearby crane. He hoisted himself up quickly and silently, disappearing into the shadows above. Ember waited a moment, then slipped out from behind the crates, moving quickly and quietly toward the truck. The first guard never saw her coming. Ember's knife slid between his ribs with practiced ease, and she caught him before he hit the ground, easing him down silently. The second guard was dispatched with a single shot from her silenced revolver, the bullet finding its mark with deadly accuracy. But as she moved to take out the third guard, a shout rang out, and suddenly the docks erupted in chaos. The remaining guards opened fire, their bullets pinging off the metal containers as Ember dove for cover. Jax returned fire from his perch above, picking off the guards one by one with his rifle. We've been made. Jax shouted, his voice barely audible over the gunfire. No kidding. Ember retorted, reloading her revolver. We need to get that crate open before they bring in reinforcements. Jax tossed a small device down to Ember. Use this. Ember caught the device, a small, cylindrical tube with a blinking red light, and without hesitation, she ran toward the truck. Bullets whizzed past her head, but she didn't slow down, her focus narrowing to a single point, the crate. She reached the truck, slapped the device onto the side of the crate, and dove behind the truck just as it exploded with a deafening boom. The crate's metal sides crumpled inward, revealing its contents, a large, ominous-looking machine, covered in wires and pipes, with a glowing core at its center. Ember's eyes widened. This was more than just a shipment. This was a weapon that could level half the city. Locke's building a bomb, she muttered, her mind racing. A bomb powered by the city's own energy. Jax dropped down beside her, his eyes fixed on the machine. We need to disarm it. Now. Ember nodded, her hands moving quickly over the machine's controls. She had no idea how to disarm a bomb of this magnitude, but she knew enough about machines to recognize a power core when she saw one. Cover me, she ordered, her voice tense. Jax didn't need to be told twice. He fired at the remaining guards, buying Ember the time she needed. Her fingers flew over the wires, pulling, cutting, rerouting. The machine hummed ominously, its core glowing brighter with each passing second. Come on, Ember muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. She could hear the whine of the core reaching a fever pitch, the air around it crackling with energy. If she didn't disable it now, they were all going to die. Finally, with a sharp twist of a wire, the core flickered and dimmed. The machine fell silent, its glow fading to nothing. Ember let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. It's done, she said, standing up and wiping her brow. Locke won't be using this. Jax slung his rifle over his shoulder, giving her a nod of approval. You did good, Blackthorn. But this isn't over. Locke's going to know we took this from him, and he won't be happy. Ember's eyes hardened as she looked out over the docks, the weight of her mission settling on her shoulders. Let him come, she said, her voice cold and determined. I'm ready for him. As the two of them disappeared into the shadows of Iron Spire, the city's pulse continued its relentless rhythm. But now, within that rhythm, there was a new beat, one of defiance, of rebellion, and of a flame that refused to be extinguished. Ember Blackthorn was ready to take on the city, one gear at a time.